Shalom. Your income increases, your lifestyle expands, yet money never feels sufficient. You watch the numbers grow in your account. You celebrate briefly. Then, within weeks, sometimes days, that same familiar weight returns. The pressure, the sense that what you have is not quite enough for what you need. This happens regardless of the amount. Whether you earn $30,000 or $300,000, the feeling remains consistent. Money arrives, money leaves, and you are left with the same underlying tension that brought you here in the first place. You are not alone in this experience. Millions of people live this exact pattern. They earn more, spend more, and find themselves in precisely the same position they occupied before the increase. The numbers change, the feeling does not. Let me show you what is actually happening. When money arrives in your account, you experience a moment of relief. The pressure lifts. You breathe differently. Your shoulders relax. This relief feels like progress, like movement toward a solution. But within a short time, your expenses begin to expand to meet your new income level. This expansion happens automatically. You do not decide to spend more. You simply find yourself making slightly different choices. A better apartment, higher quality food, more convenient services. Small upgrades that individually seem reasonable, collectively consume the additional income. The relief was temporary. The pressure returns. And now you need even more money to recreate that moment of relief you experienced when the income first increased. This cycle repeats at every income level. The person earning $50,000 feels the same pressure as the person earning $500,000. The specific concerns differ: rent versus mortgage, grocery budget versus investment portfolio, but the underlying experience remains identical. You have witnessed this in your own life. Each promotion, each raise, each new income stream promised to solve the problem. And each time, after a brief period of relief, you found yourself back where you started, wanting more, needing more, feeling like what you have is insufficient. Most people misunderstand why money never feels enough. They believe the problem lies in external circumstances, rising costs, inflation, lack of opportunity. These explanations feel logical because they point to forces beyond individual control. If costs are rising faster than income, then naturally money feels insufficient. If opportunities are limited, then naturally progress feels slow. This reasoning contains elements of truth. Costs do rise, inflation does exist, opportunities do vary. But these factors cannot explain why someone earning 10 times what they earned 5 years ago experiences the same fundamental pressure around money. The external circumstances have improved dramatically, yet the internal experience remains unchanged. Others believe the solution lies in earning more, much more. They calculate exactly how much they would need to feel secure, enough to cover all expenses, build substantial savings, and eliminate financial worry entirely. This number feels concrete, achievable, rational. But you have already tested this theory. You have earned more than you once thought would be enough. And it was not enough. The target moved. The needs expanded. The pressure adapted to the new income level and reasserted itself. Some blame their spending habits. They believe they lack discipline, that they make poor choices, that they need better budgeting systems. They implement strict controls, track every expense, eliminate unnecessary purchases. These efforts produce temporary improvement. The pressure subsides briefly, then it returns, often stronger than before, because the underlying dynamic has not changed. None of these explanations address what is actually happening. Money does not expand your life. It expands the structure that already holds your life. If the structure is weak, income becomes pressure. If the structure is defined, income becomes stability. Income without containment converts into tension. Money responds to the structure of the one who carries it. When you carry pressure around money, that pressure acts as a force that pushes money away from you, not through mystical means, but through entirely practical mechanisms. Pressure creates urgency. Urgency drives reactive decisions. Reactive decisions typically involve spending rather than preserving. Consider how you behave when you feel financial pressure. You make quick choices to relieve that pressure. You purchase solutions. You upgrade circumstances. You invest in changes that promise to improve your situation. Each of these responses involves money leaving your possession. The pressure also affects how others relate to you financially. When you carry urgency around money, people sense it. They may not consciously recognize what they are sensing, but they respond to it. Business opportunities become less attractive. Negotiations favor the other party. Financial relationships become strained. This creates a continuous outflow of resources, not through careless spending, but through the natural consequences of operating from a state of financial pressure. Money flows toward calm, away from urgency. This is observable in every area of life. Wealthy individuals who maintain their wealth share one common characteristic. They do not carry urgency around money. They may be ambitious, driven, highly focused on financial goals, but they do not operate from a state of pressure or desperate need. This calmness allows money to accumulate and remain with them. People who lose wealth quickly, regardless of how much they initially possessed, share the opposite characteristic. They carry urgency. They make decisions from pressure. Money moves through them rapidly because their inner state cannot hold it. This is why earning more never solved your problem. The additional income encountered the same inner condition that created the original pressure. That condition converted the new resources into the same outflow patterns that existed before. Urgency converts resources into reaction. In Torah design, increase never precedes containment. Creation itself begins with separation, not expansion. Boundaries appear before growth. Structure appears before multiplication. Nothing expands in Torah without first being defined. When you need money urgently, you spend it urgently. When you want security desperately, you make desperate choices to create that security. These choices invariably involve trading present resources for the promise of future relief. You buy insurance policies you do not need. You invest in opportunities that feel urgent rather than sound. You upgrade your living situation to reduce one source of pressure while creating others. You hire services to handle tasks you could manage yourself, trading money for time and convenience. None of these choices are individually problematic. Taken together, under the influence of urgency, they create a pattern where resources flow out as quickly as they flow in. The problem is not spending. The problem is structural absence. When income rises without containment, life accelerates instead of stabilizing. Consider your recent financial choices. Notice how many were made in response to pressure rather than from a calm evaluation of options. Notice how many involved spending money to reduce stress, create convenience, or solve problems that felt urgent at the time. Each of these choices made perfect sense when you made it. The decision reduced pressure in the moment, but the underlying condition that created the pressure remained unchanged. New pressures emerged, new spending followed. This is why people who win large sums of money, lottery winners, inheritance recipients, those who sell businesses for significant amounts, often return to financial pressure within a few years. The amount was never the issue. The inner condition that created the original pressure was never addressed. It reasserted itself and consumed the windfall. The same mechanism operates in reverse. People who maintain wealth through economic downturns, business failures, and major expenses share the ability to remain calm around money. This calmness allows them to make better decisions, preserve resources, and rebuild when necessary. Now observe what happens to your decision-making when money feels insufficient. Income rises, but satisfaction does not. Each increase in income creates a brief moment of relief, followed by a return to the original pressure. This happens so consistently that you may have stopped noticing the pattern. You simply expect that more money will help, experience disappointment when it does not, and focus on earning even more. The satisfaction you seek is not actually connected to the amount of money you possess. It is connected to the absence of pressure around money. But as long as the pressure remains, no amount can eliminate it. The pressure adapts to whatever amount is available. This is why conversations about money often focus on specific numbers, salaries, savings targets, retirement requirements. These numbers create the illusion that the problem has a quantifiable solution. But you have already discovered that reaching these numbers does not solve the underlying issue. Your decisions become reactive rather than strategic. When money feels insufficient, every financial choice carries emotional weight. You cannot simply evaluate options based on merit. You must also manage the pressure, the urgency, the sense that making the wrong choice will worsen your situation. This emotional component distorts your judgment. Opportunities that should be obvious become unclear. Simple decisions become complicated. You find yourself paralyzed by choices that should be straightforward, then making impulsive decisions about significant purchases. The reactivity also affects your relationship with time. You make short-term choices to relieve immediate pressure, even when you know these choices create long-term problems. You refinance debts to lower monthly payments while increasing total costs. You take jobs that pay more, but offer less long-term potential. You buy cheap items repeatedly instead of purchasing quality once. Each reactive decision creates new circumstances that require additional reactive decisions. The pattern compounds until most of your financial life consists of managing problems created by previous solutions. Opportunities dissolve before they can consolidate. When you operate from financial pressure, you cannot wait for opportunities to develop properly. Everything must happen quickly because the pressure demands immediate relief. This urgency causes you to abandon opportunities just before they would have produced results. You start businesses, then close them before they become profitable. You begin investment strategies, then change approaches when immediate results do not appear. You develop skills, then switch focus before those skills can generate significant income. The pressure creates a need for constant activity around money. You cannot simply let things develop naturally. You must always be doing something to improve your financial situation. This constant activity prevents you from allowing any single approach enough time to work. Others observe this pattern and interpret it as lack of commitment or poor planning. But the real issue is that pressure cannot tolerate the uncertainty required for most opportunities to mature. Pressure demands certainty, immediate results, and constant progress. Real opportunities rarely provide any of these. Spending replaces containment. When money feels insufficient, your default response to any problem becomes spending money to solve it. This feels practical and efficient. Time is limited, resources are needed, and money can often purchase solutions quickly. But this approach prevents you from developing the ability to contain problems without spending. Every challenge becomes a financial challenge. Every solution requires an expenditure. Your capacity to handle difficulties without spending money diminishes over time. This creates dependency on money to manage normal life circumstances. Tasks that could be handled through patience, creativity, or simple endurance become expenses. Skills that could be developed become services that must be purchased. Problems that could be solved through thinking become purchases. The dependency makes money feel even more essential. You need more money not just for luxuries or investments, but for basic problem solving. The pressure increases because the stakes have increased. You also lose the satisfaction that comes from handling challenges through your own capability. When every problem becomes something you purchase a solution for, you experience less sense of competence and self-reliance. This psychological effect adds to the pressure around money. Notice how often your response to difficulty is to consider what you can buy to make it easier. Notice how rarely you explore ways to handle the same difficulty without spending. Notice how this pattern has shifted over time as your income has increased. The shift is gradual and feels like progress. You can afford solutions that were previously unavailable. But the underlying effect is that you have become dependent on money for an increasingly wide range of life circumstances. This dependency is why earning more money does not reduce the pressure around money. Higher income allows you to purchase solutions to more problems, which creates dependency on that income level. Any threat to the income becomes a threat to your ability to manage normal life circumstances. This is why earning more never solved it. Enough was never reached. Money does not calm disorder. It magnifies it. Without structure, more income simply increases movement. It does not create sufficiency. The problem was never the amount of money you possessed. The problem was the structure that interpreted every amount as insufficient. That condition creates pressure. Pressure drives reactive behavior. Reactive behavior causes money to flow away from you as quickly as it arrives. Increasing your income without changing the inner conditions simply scales up the same pattern. You earn more, spend more, feel the same pressure, and need even more to feel relief. Enough is not a number. Enough is a state of being that exists independently of your financial circumstances. People with very little money sometimes experience this state. People with enormous wealth sometimes never experience it. The state has nothing to do with having sufficient money to meet your needs. It has to do with not carrying pressure around money. When pressure is absent, whatever amount you have feels workable. When pressure is present, no amount feels sufficient. You have been trying to solve an inner problem through outer means. This approach cannot work because the inner condition shapes how you experience whatever outer circumstances you create. Consider the wealthiest people you know or have observed. Notice that their sense of financial adequacy does not correlate directly with their net worth. Some people with modest wealth feel completely secure. Others with enormous wealth feel constantly anxious about money. The difference is not in their circumstances. The difference is in their inner relationship to money. Those who feel secure, regardless of amount, do not carry pressure around money. Those who feel anxious, regardless of amount, do carry that pressure. Your task was never to earn enough money to eliminate the pressure. Your task was to understand why the pressure exists and how it operates. Once you understand the mechanism, you can observe it in yourself without being controlled by it. The pressure exists because your structure was built on scarcity. These beliefs create a state of continuous wanting that cannot be satisfied by any amount of money. When you want more money, you automatically experience what you have as insufficient. This experience creates pressure. The pressure drives behavior that moves money away from you. The cycle perpetuates itself regardless of how much you earn. Breaking this cycle does not require earning more money. It requires understanding that the feeling of insufficiency is created by the wanting itself, not by the actual amount you possess. This shift comes when your structure changes. Pressure is replaced by defined boundaries. You observe the pattern in yourself. You notice how the pressure operates. You see how it affects your decisions. You recognize that it exists independently of your actual financial circumstances. As you build containment, the pressure loses leverage, because urgency has less access to your decisions, not because you have solved it, but because you have seen through it. You recognize it as a structural pattern rather than an accurate reflection of reality. This recognition creates space between you and the pressure. In that space, you can make financial decisions from clarity rather than urgency. Money stops flowing away from you as quickly because you stop making reactive choices driven by pressure. This is not a technique or strategy. It is simply what happens when you see clearly how the pattern operates. A defined structure disrupts the pattern because reactive spending no longer has permission to lead. You have spent years trying to solve this problem by changing your external circumstances. You have earned more, saved more, invested more, planned more. None of these approaches address the inner condition that creates the experience of insufficiency. The inner condition cannot be changed through external means. It can only be seen clearly for what it is. This process happens gradually. You do not suddenly feel abundant. You simply begin to notice when the pressure arises and how it affects your choices. You see through it more often. You react to it less automatically. The amount you need does not decrease, but your experience of having enough changes fundamentally. What felt insufficient before feels workable now. Not because circumstances have improved dramatically, but because the inner pressure that created the sense of insufficiency has been seen through. This is why people who understand this principle often seem mysteriously abundant regardless of their actual wealth. They do not carry pressure around money. Without that pressure, whatever they have feels sufficient. From that sufficiency, they make better choices. Better choices lead to better outcomes. You can observe this in yourself right now. Notice the difference between how you feel about money when you are calm versus when you are pressured. Notice how different decisions feel appealing from these different states. Notice how the same financial circumstances can feel completely different depending on your inner condition. The solution you have been seeking was never external. It was always a matter of seeing clearly how the internal pattern operates and allowing that clarity to naturally disrupt the pattern. Money will never feel like enough as long as you carry the pressure that makes it feel insufficient. This pressure exists independently of your actual financial circumstances. It is created by a particular way of thinking about money, not by the amount you possess. When you see this clearly, the pressure begins to dissolve naturally. As it dissolves, money stops feeling insufficient regardless of the amount. This is not positive thinking or mindset work. This is simply the natural result of seeing reality clearly rather than through the distortion of pressure and urgency. Enough is not created by more money. Enough is created by structure that does not leak. When structure is present, money can remain. If this brought clarity, subscribe. Not for motivation, but for understanding.